So it turns out that South African Airways has lost an estimated 1 billion rand over the past 3 years flying between South Africa and China. The beleaguered national carrier announced today it will close that loss-making route. It will also look to cut other routes and possibly cut jobs as it tries to reduce costs and become viable in the skies. SAA held an annual general meeting which has become unusual in recent years due to its cash-strapped position and lack of financial statements. SAA is only a going concern because government has stepped in once more. Treasury last week added 6.5 billion in a guarantee, which means government is providing backing for SAA to take on more than 14 billion rands worth of debt in total. Acting SAA CEO Nico reported back on a 90-day plan announced last month. He says the airline will probably make another loss this year. In the year until March, SAA made an operating loss of 374 million rand, but that is down from 425 million the year before. Well, to discuss, we're now joined by Acting CEO Nico. Thank you for coming in, Nico. So R1 billion sounds staggering. And is this part of the problem? Because as I understand, this route was imposed, in fact, for good reason. We want to encourage south-south trade. But SAA actually wasn't allowed to look at the viability of the route, the number of passengers.
Look, SAA originally, when the business case was drafted 3-4 years ago, had an option to not enter the route. It is, however, true that we have been operating the route for at least a year longer than we wanted to. We did request a withdrawal from the route previously, but in the present request, the government and the shareholder agreed to our withdrawal.
Is this one of the routes you said last year was politically sensitive? So did you basically have to fight with government to cut this route?
Look, I think it's not necessarily a question of fighting with government. It's trying to balance the two agendas, if you wish. On the one side, China accounts for 14% of the trade and tourism of this country. It is a very important trade partner. Yes, it's also part of BRICS, so there's a myriad of considerations that one has to take into account. On the other hand, there isn't sufficient passenger volumes to justify or to make it financially viable. SA operates the wrong aircraft type. So in this case, it makes much more sense for SA to engage with its partners, in this case Air China. So Air China will enter the route more or less in the middle of May with 3 direct flights, directly replacing the 3 direct flights that SA today operates. So therefore the connectivity is still established, except that it's not at taxpayer expense.
Will Air China be able to make profits and on this exact same route, and why are they more efficient than SAA?
Look, there's no Chinese carrier that operates to South Africa at present, and there must be financial and commercial reasons behind that. In December, I went across and engaged with Air China, and they've agreed to give the route a try. They do have different aircraft types which may improve their viability. So we're going to see. For us, it's important to make sure that we establish and maintain the connectivity. They will, as Air China or any other airline, will justify the reasons why they operate the route.
According to many members of the South African public, SAA has just been a mess for a long time. And I want to ask you, you've said it's in a mountain of trouble. What is the problem? There were complaints that SAA was never fully capitalized in the first place. Is this interference, where you do have to do things for political reasons, part of the problem? Is there incompetence that needs to be addressed?
Look, there's a lot of answers to that question. On the one side, yes, it is true that SA is very highly geared. It is one of the most highly geared airlines in the world in terms of reliance on debt for funding as opposed to capital or equity for funding. So that is true, and that of course has got the consequence of higher interest burdens. In the last year alone it was 250 million. In the current fiscal, the interest bill balloons to 500 million. And of course this is interest that SA has to service, and SA stands accountable for repaying all of this debt. So capital structure is an issue. Beyond that, SA has had in some cases bad luck or bad decisions in terms of aircraft types, where on average the current wide-body aircraft type that SA operates is on average 34% older than other African carriers such as Ethiopian and Kenya Airways. So equipment that is not as efficient. And then internally, staff productivity is a challenge. We need to work at that. And SA's overall cost structure is not what it should be.
Let's talk about bad decisions, because many people were startled after the disastrous problems with hedging oil in the past. That was reported recently, that you had again hedged oil, and we're not benefiting from this incredible plunge in the oil price. How tragic is it, firstly?
It's a bit of a catch-22 in the results that we announced today, which is results for the year ending March 2014, when oil pricing was above $100 a barrel. We recorded 691 million rand in profits from hedging instruments. In the current year, we're looking at losses less than 691. So it is a bit of swings and roundabouts. We don't hedge on a speculative basis. So we've got rolling hedges going out 18 months, where we hedge up to 60% of our oil.
So how much will be lost, and when does the contracts? When do the contracts come to an end, and SAA can benefit?
The current estimate of losses, both realised and unrealised, in the current fiscal is in the order of 300 million in terms of hedging.
Sure.
But again, as I said, last year we had 690 million rand profit. Yeah. So we're not back in the 2002, 3, 4 years where there was very aggressive hedging in place, and where there was 6, 7, 8 billion rands worth of hedge losses.
It sounds so sad, because a lot of people thought the problem with SAA was these old planes like that you're talking about, that guzzle fuel. Now there could have been a breather. Unfortunately, that breather's not there. How does this happen then, that you're apparently ordering the wrong planes from Airbus and looking at that?
I think that it would be incorrect for me to criticise decisions taken in the late 90s and early 2000s. At that point in time, for example, A340-600 that SAA operates at the moment, that aircraft was delivered a month before 9/11 happened. So for 50 years before 9/11 happened, oil was priced at $200 a barrel. Having an aircraft with 4 engines travelling long distance over vast expanses of ocean was the correct decision to make in a world where oil was $20 a barrel. 9/11 happened, oil went up to $100 a barrel, and all of a sudden you find yourself on the very wrong side of a decision, which you couldn't have had the foresight at the time for the management in place at the time.
What about these Airbus planes? You're saying they're the wrong size because you want to do the longer flights, is that correct?
On the A320 aircraft, so SAA has received 10 brand new A320s in the last 18 months. This emanates from an aircraft order placed in 2002. So where SAA's business model has evolved to is that it's much more focused on Africa as opposed to the short-haul domestic market, where Mango as a low-cost carrier is more focused on the domestic short-haul space. So therefore SAA requires longer-range aircraft, 6 to 8 hour flight durations to effectively
Is this again because of unforeseen things, or did somebody make the wrong call, buying the wrong planes, which seems pretty serious?
Yeah. I don't think that the A320 was the wrong decision. That transaction was concluded in 2002, possibly paid above the market for the equipment. So what we're doing at this point in time is engaging with Airbus, seeing how we can finally just clear ourselves and rid ourselves from that transaction in 2002.
Okay, today you reported back on the 90-day plan. Firstly, solvency was part of it. Has government given enough now?
I think that the guarantee that we obtained from government, and again I have to clarify that the government has not injected funding or capital into SAA since 2008. So yes, the guarantee of 6.58 billion is sufficient to cover the going concern period, at least until the end of September next year. I do believe that it's sufficient. We need to turn this airline into a profitable entity where we're not reliant on debt finance or any form of capital finance going forward. That will not be achieved in the current year. The 90-day action plan was only implemented from the end of November. But all the steps that we're taking now is meant to make a material and substantial difference in SAA's financial results for the year starting 1st of April 2015. We've identified in excess of 1.3 billion rand of savings, and we've taken the majority of steps as far as achieving those savings. We've achieved, at least in the last month, 71 million rand in procurement savings, and there's a whole myriad of savings.
So clarify, within a year you're heading to profits, and is the long-term strategy correct? Because there's a short-term plan and then a long-term one, which some people said was too long. I mean, look at what happens with the oil price. How can you forecast so many years ahead?
So, in a certain extent, you can't win. In one sense, you don't plan long enough, and you find yourself on the wrong side of something. In other cases, you plan too long in advance. So, firstly, SAA will not be profitable within a 12-month period. But what we will be doing is we will make sure that we get to operating profits. Yes, we need to resolve matters around funding, because as I stated, next year we'll have an interest bill of 750 million. But operating profits, I do believe, is achievable in the 12-month period starting. At least our budget says that we are aiming to shoot for a marginal operating profit for the year ending March 2016. Bottom line, of course, will still be affected by heavy interest charges and any write-offs of aircraft assets that we may face.
All right, appreciate your time tonight. That was the acting CEO of SAA, Nico Bezuidenhout.